The cold silence of space was broken by the hum of a malfunctioning spaceship. Captain Marcus Venn stood on the bridge, his jaw clenched as he stared at the smoke-filled screens. His crew of 7 worked tirelessly to stabilize the failing systems, but it was clear they were stranded. The ship had crash-landed on an uncharted alien planet after a meteor storm had damaged their engines. "Captain, we're running out of time," said Sarah, the ship's engineer, wiping sweat off her forehead. "If we don't fix this soon, the power will completely shut down." Marcus nodded, trying to mask his worry. "Keep working. We'll figure something out." Before anyone could respond, the ship's sensors beeped. A presence was approaching, large, organized, and definitely not friendly. Marcus exchanged a tense glance with his first officer, Lieutenant Brandon. "Prepare for contact," Marcus ordered, gripping the edge of his console. Moments later, the spaceship was surrounded by towering alien warriors clad in shimmering silver armor. Their glowing blue eyes scanned the crew with an unsettling intensity. The warriors didn't speak but gestured for Marcus and his team to step outside. "Do we have a choice?" Brandon whispered. Marcus shook his head. "No. Let's go. Stay calm and follow my lead." The crew stepped out into the alien planet's eerie atmosphere. The sky was a strange shade of green, and the ground beneath them shimmered like glass. At the center of the alien formation stood a figure unlike the others, a tall woman with pale violet skin and a regal posture. Her piercing silver eyes locked onto Marcus. "I am Queen Lyravel," she said in a voice both commanding and melodic. "You have trespassed on our sacred land." Marcus raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm. Our ship was damaged, and we had no choice but to land here. We just need time to repair it." Lyravel studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "Your people will not leave this planet so easily. You owe us restitution for invading our territory." Marcus's heart sank. What kind of restitution? A faint smile appeared on her face. "A marriage." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. The crew exchanged stunned glances, unsure if they had heard her correctly. Marcus took a cautious step forward. "Marriage." Lyravel nodded. "To me. It is the only way to secure your release and ensure peace between our species. Refuse, and your crew will remain here, permanently." Marcus's mind raced. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. If he refused, his crew would suffer. If he agreed, he would be bound to an alien queen in a union he couldn't begin to understand. His crew's lives hung in the balance, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. After a moment, he met Lyravel's gaze. "I need time to think," he said. "You have until sunrise," she replied, her voice sharp. "Choose wisely, human." As the alien warriors escorted them back to the ship, Marcus knew one thing. His decision would change everything. Back inside the damaged spaceship, the crew sat in stunned silence. The alien queen's demand had left everyone speechless. Marcus paced the bridge, his mind racing with possibilities. He could feel the weight of their stares. But no one dared to speak until Sarah finally broke the silence. "Captain, this is insane," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marriage to an alien queen. That's not diplomacy. That's blackmail." "She didn't leave us much choice," Brandon muttered, his arms crossed. "If we refuse, we're stuck here. And this planet, it doesn't seem very forgiving." Marcus stopped pacing and looked at his crew. "I know it's a ridiculous demand, but our survival depends on it. We don't have the resources to fix the ship without their help." "Do you trust her, Captain?" asked Emily, the ship's medic. "What if this is a trap? What if she uses you and then abandons us?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't trust her, but I don't think we have a better option right now. I'll meet with her and see if I can negotiate." The crew nodded reluctantly. None of them liked the idea, but they knew Marcus would always put their safety first. He had earned their loyalty through countless missions, and now They trusted him to make the right call. As the alien sun began to set, casting the green sky in hues of purple and gold, Marcus made his way to the alien camp. The towering warriors escorted him to Lyravel's tent, a grand structure made of shimmering fabric that seemed to shift colors in the light. Inside, the queen sat on an intricately carved throne, her silver eyes glowing softly. "You've come to decide, human," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "Speak." Marcus straightened his posture, forcing himself to appear confident despite the nerves swirling in his chest. "Before I make a decision, I need to understand why you want this. Why marriage? Why me?" Lyravel regarded him thoughtfully, as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, she stood and approached him, her movements graceful and deliberate. "Our people are connected through a psychic bond," she explained. "That bond has weakened over generations. Without it, we face chaos. To strengthen it, we need to unite with a species that can balance our minds. Humans are compatible. You are unique." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "So this is about survival, for your people?" "Yes," she replied, her voice softening. "And for yours. A union between us would symbolize peace. It would protect your crew from harm and ensure they can leave safely." Marcus frowned. "And what happens to me?" "You will become part of my world," Lyravel said, stepping closer. "A partner to me. A leader to my people, but only if you accept." Her words carried a strange mix of sincerity and authority. Marcus felt the weight of her gaze, knowing this wasn't just a personal decision. It was one that could alter the fate of two species. "I need to know one thing," he said. "If I agree, will you honor your promise and let my crew go free?" Lyravel nodded firmly. "Yes, they will be safe. That is my vow." Marcus hesitated, his heart pounding. The sunrise deadline loomed closer, and he knew his time to decide was running out. The next morning, as the alien sun crept over the shimmering horizon, Marcus stood at the edge of the alien encampment. His crew watched him from a distance, their faces tense with worry. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on his shoulders. For their safety, he had agreed to the alien queen's terms. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain: there was no turning back now. A procession of alien warriors arrived to escort him to the ceremonial grounds. Their movements were precise and disciplined, their glowing blue eyes scanning his every step. Marcus couldn't help but feel like a prisoner being led to his fate. The leader of the procession, a warrior taller and more imposing than the rest, stopped to address him. "Do not falter, human," the warrior said in a deep, resonant voice. "This union is sacred. It is not just for your crew. It is for the survival of two worlds." Marcus nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He followed the procession to a clearing in the alien forest, where the ground sparkled like crushed diamonds. At the center stood Queen Lyravel, draped in a flowing gown of iridescent fabric that seemed to shimmer with its own light. She looked every bit the regal figure she was, but there was something more, an unspoken vulnerability in her eyes. The ceremony began with a haunting melody played on alien instruments, their sounds echoing through the air like whispers from another world. Marcus stood before Lyravel as an elder alien stepped forward, holding a small glowing crystal. "This crystal," the elder said, his voice reverent, "will bind your minds, your thoughts, and your fates. It is the bond of trust and unity. Do you both accept?" Lyravel nodded without hesitation. All eyes turned to Marcus, who took a deep breath before answering. "I accept." The elder placed the crystal between them, and it began to emit a warm, golden light. Marcus felt a strange sensation wash over him, like a gentle tide pulling at his thoughts. Images and emotions flooded his mind, not his own but Lyravel's. He saw glimpses of her world, her struggles, and her determination to save her people. It was overwhelming, yet somehow comforting. Lyravel's voice echoed in his mind, soft yet firm. "This is our bond now, Marcus. You are no longer alone." The connection faded, leaving Marcus breathless. Around them, the alien crowd erupted into a harmonious chant, signaling the ceremony's completion. Lyravel reached out and took his hand, her touch surprisingly warm. "It is done," she said softly, her silver eyes locking onto his. "You are now part of my world." Marcus glanced at his crew in the distance, who were watching with a mixture of relief and unease. He had kept his promise to protect them, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger than himself. As the chanting subsided, Marcus knew his life had changed forever, but whether for better or worse, only time would tell. The ceremony was over, but the weight of Marcus's decision still hung in the air. He stood by Lyravel's side, watching the alien crowd begin to disperse. Despite the outward show of peace, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that not everyone in this alien society was pleased with the new union. His instincts were right. As they walked back toward the Queen's grand tent, a tense silence filled the space around them. Lyravel's posture was regal, but there was a slight tightness in her shoulders that Marcus noticed. She was aware of the eyes on her, eyes that disapproved of her actions. The moment they entered the tent, a figure stepped forward from the shadows. He was tall, his face sharp with features that could easily be mistaken for a predator. His armor, unlike the others, was black, an intimidating contrast to the silver of the rest of the warriors. He looked at Marcus with a sneer, his gaze dripping with disdain. "Lyravel," the man's voice was cold and harsh, "you have made a grave mistake." Marcus stood still, his eyes narrowing as he sized up the man before him. He could sense the power this alien held. There was no mistaking the tension between them. "Varric," Lyravel said, her tone warning, "I did what I had to do." Varric's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You chose a human, an outsider, over the strength of our people. You've betrayed us all for this marriage." He turned his gaze to Marcus, his eyes filled with contempt. "This human will be the end of your reign, Lyravel. You're weak to think you can trust him." Marcus stepped forward, his jaw set. "I don't need your approval, alien, but I'll tell you this. If it wasn't for me, none of you would be free right now. This alliance ensures peace, not just for us, but for you as well." Varric's eyes flashed with fury, but he didn't speak. Lyravel's calm voice cut through the tension. "Varric," she said quietly, "I will not tolerate your disrespect. The decision has been made. This union will bring us peace and strength, not war. Your arguments are meaningless." Varric's lip curled into a snarl. "We will see about that," he hissed before storming out of the tent, his steps heavy with anger. Marcus turned to Lyravel, his heart pounding. Is he a threat? Lyravel didn't immediately answer. She looked down, a slight furrow in her brow as she considered the question. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter. "Varric is a powerful lord in my court, and he believes that only through force can we secure our future. He does not understand the need for unity. His mind is clouded by ambition. He will not give up easily. But he is dangerous, Marcus. You must be careful." Marcus nodded. "I'll keep my eyes open." As the night drew in, Marcus couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The Queen had made her choice, but not everyone shared her vision. This was far from over. The political rivalries that threatened to tear this fragile alliance apart had only just begun, and Marcus knew that, no matter how much he wanted to protect his crew, his survival might depend on navigating the complex, treacherous waters of alien politics. The days following the ceremony passed quickly, filled with a whirlwind of new experiences and responsibilities. Marcus had become a symbol of peace, but it was clear that his life would never be the same. Lyravel, despite her regal and often distant nature, seemed determined to teach him the ways of her people, an unfamiliar and sometimes uncomfortable process for Marcus. One morning, as the sun cast its purple light over the alien landscape, Lyravel took Marcus to the heart of her city, a sprawling metropolis filled with alien architecture that seemed to pulse with energy. The streets were lined with glowing plants, and strange creatures moved through the air, their wings humming softly. It was a world both beautiful and alien, full of wonder and danger. "This is where the heart of our people lies," Lyravel said as they walked side by side, her hand resting lightly on his. Her fingers were cool to the touch, but her presence was warm, comforting, yet commanding. "Our minds are connected through a bond that has weakened over generations. Our people need unity, Marcus, not just with each other, but with someone who can strengthen our link. Someone like you." Marcus looked at her, his heart heavy with the gravity of her words. The bond she spoke of was more than just a symbolic connection. It was a matter of survival for her people. If he couldn't embrace this, if he couldn't truly connect with her, then the peace they sought might crumble before it ever truly began. "I don't understand how this works," Marcus admitted, his voice low. "This bond you talk about, how can I help you? I'm not like you." Lyravel stopped and turned to him, her silver eyes meeting his with a softness he hadn't expected. "That is the beauty of it. You are not like us, Marcus. You are different, but that difference is what will strengthen us." She stepped closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "The bond is not just physical. It is emotional, psychic. It will tie us together in ways that you cannot imagine. You will feel what I feel. My pain will be yours, and my joy will be yours as well. But more importantly, you will understand me in a way that no one else can. That is why this bond is so crucial." Marcus could feel his heart race. The idea of a bond so deep, one that would let her emotions seep into his own, one that would tie their lives together in such an intimate way, was both terrifying and exhilarating. He had never experienced anything like it before. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "This is a lot to take in." Lyravel's gaze softened. "It is not something you can prepare for. It will come naturally when the time is right. For now, all I ask is that you trust me. Let the bond grow between us. Let it strengthen, and when the time comes, we will be able to protect both our worlds." Her words lingered in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside him. He knew this was more than just a marriage now. It was a shared fate. "I trust you," he said, his voice steady but unsure. "And I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. For you, for your people, for my crew." Lyravel smiled, her hand reaching up to touch his cheek. "Then the bond will grow, Marcus, and we will face whatever comes together." As they stood there, surrounded by the beauty of Lyravel's world, Marcus couldn't help but feel a strange sense of hope. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time since they'd landed on this alien planet, he felt a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. The bond was beginning, and it was more than just the future of his crew that rested on his shoulders now. It was the future of two worlds, united by a bond stronger than any of them could fully understand. "You said." The days grew heavier, and Marcus felt the strain of the bond growing stronger. His connection with Lyravel had deepened, not just emotionally, but mentally as well. They could now feel each other's emotions, their thoughts overlapping in strange and unfamiliar ways. At times, Marcus would hear her voice in his mind, gentle and soothing, guiding him through the intricacies of her people's customs. Other times, it was her pain, raw and unfiltered, that rushed through him like a storm. But there was something else, something darker in the air. Despite their union, despite the promise of peace, Marcus sensed growing tension within the alien court. Whispers of discontent echoed through the corridors of Lyravel's palace. Varric, the powerful alien lord who had opposed their marriage, had not disappeared into the shadows as Marcus had hoped. Instead, he was biding his time, watching for the right moment to strike. That moment came sooner than anyone expected. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the distant stars shimmered in the alien sky like distant diamonds. Lyravel had invited Marcus to a private feast in her honor, a celebration of their newfound alliance. The long table was filled with delicacies unfamiliar to Marcus. Glowing fruits, shimmering meats, and exotic drinks served in delicate crystal goblets. The air was thick with the scent of sweet spices, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the night wore on, Lyravel noticed his unease. She leaned close, her voice soft in his ear. "You feel it too, don't you? The tension is thick tonight." Marcus nodded, glancing around the room. Her warriors, usually so calm and disciplined, seemed on edge. There was a certain restlessness in the air. "What's going on? Is it Varric?" Lyravel's eyes darkened. "He has supporters. He will not give up easily. There are those who want me gone, and they will stop at nothing to achieve it." Just as she spoke, the doors to the hall burst open with a deafening crash. A group of Varric's loyalists stormed in, weapons drawn, their faces twisted with fury. Marcus stood quickly, instinctively placing himself between Lyravel and the attackers. "Varric," Lyravel called out, her voice icy. "You dare interrupt my peace again." Varric stepped forward, his dark armor gleaming in the light of the fire. His eyes were filled with cold hatred. "Your peace is a lie, Lyravel. You have made us weak by aligning with this human. This marriage is nothing but a symbol of your cowardice. Today, it ends." Before Marcus could react, Varric's soldiers lunged forward, but Marcus was ready. He had learned quickly how to fight alongside the alien warriors, using their weapons and tactics to defend himself. He grabbed a nearby staff, expertly blocking the first strike. "Get to safety, Lyravel," Marcus shouted, his eyes never leaving the attackers. Lyravel didn't move. Instead, she stood tall, her face a mask of resolve. "I will not run. This is my battle too." The clash of weapons filled the room as Marcus and Lyravel fought back to back, their movements synchronized. The bond between them pulsed like a living thing, each of them anticipating the other's next move. It was as if they had become a single force, each thought and action flowing seamlessly between them. Despite their skill, the attackers were relentless. Varric's forces seemed endless, pouring into the hall from every direction. Marcus felt the weight of the battle settling in his bones. The fight was far from over, and the future of their alliance, perhaps even their lives, hung in the balance. As the battle raged on, Marcus knew one thing for certain. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight for their future. The battle in the grand hall had been fierce. Marcus could feel his energy draining as he parried and struck, the weight of the weapon in his hand growing heavier with each passing moment. Lyravel fought beside him, her alien grace and speed remarkable, but even she seemed to feel the pressure of the assault. The attackers were relentless, led by Varric, whose dark armor gleamed menacingly in the light. His eyes locked onto Marcus, full of anger and disdain. "You should never have come here," Varric growled, raising his weapon to strike. Marcus barely had time to react before Lyravel stepped in front of him, blocking Varric's strike with a fluid motion of her own. The impact echoed through the hall, but Lyravel stood strong, her silver eyes flashing with determination. "You are the one who is blind, Varric," she said, her voice cold. "The true strength lies in unity, not in division. You will never understand that." Varric snarled and pulled back, signaling his soldiers to press forward. The clash continued, the sounds of combat filling the space, but Marcus's focus never wavered. Every move he made, every strike he parried, he could feel Lyravel's presence beside him, like a constant pulse in the back of his mind. The bond they shared was stronger than ever, a connection that made them move as one. But even with their strength, it wasn't enough. The soldiers kept coming, more and more pouring into the hall, and Marcus knew they couldn't hold them off forever. There had to be a way to end this. "We need to cut off the head of the snake," Marcus said, his voice steady but urgent as he turned to Lyravel. "We can't keep fighting them all." Lyravel's eyes narrowed, and she nodded. "Agreed. We must stop Varric. If we defeat him, the rest of his forces will falter. Marcus moved quickly, his heart pounding as he scanned the room for Varric. The Lord had been circling them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, but now he was nowhere to be seen. It was then that Marcus realized. Varric had retreated. He was planning something bigger. "We need to go after him," Marcus said urgently. "Now." Lyravel nodded, her expression hardening with resolve. "Stay close. We'll end this now." The two of them cut through the remaining soldiers, their movements a blur of precision. Marcus's breath came in ragged gasps, but he pushed forward, driven by the need to protect Lyravel and his crew. As they neared the back of the hall, they saw Varric standing at the entrance, surrounded by his most loyal soldiers. He turned to face them, his eyes flashing with fury. "You think you've won. You've only delayed the inevitable." Marcus's grip tightened on his weapon. "No, Varric. This ends now." With a battle cry, they charged at Varric and his soldiers. The clash was intense, but Marcus and Lyravel fought with an unmatched unity, each move perfectly in sync. The bond they shared gave them an advantage no one could have predicted. They anticipated each other's moves, anticipating what the other would do next, and their combined strength was unstoppable. In the end, it was Lyravel who landed the final blow. With a swift strike, she knocked Varric to the ground, her eyes cold as she stood over him. "It is over," she said, her voice quiet but filled with power. Varric groaned, his body slumped. "You've won, but at what cost?" Lyravel didn't answer. She turned to Marcus, her expression softening for the first time since the battle began. "It's over. We've won." Marcus nodded, but his mind was still racing. The fight was far from over. There would be consequences to Varric's defeat, and the road ahead would be long and difficult. But for the first time, he felt a true sense of unity with Lyravel and the people of this alien world. The bond had grown stronger, and together, they had faced the ultimate test. But the real challenge was just beginning. The aftermath of the battle was heavy with silence. The once grand hall, which had hosted the celebration of Marcus and Lyravel's union, now lay in ruin. Broken weapons littered the floor, and the air was thick with the scent of dust and scorched fabric. The alien soldiers who had once followed Varric were either defeated or fleeing, their morale shattered. Marcus stood at the center of the chaos, his body bruised and tired, but his mind was clear. Lyravel, ever composed, stood beside him, her silver eyes scanning the remnants of the battle. The tension in her posture had eased, but the weight of leadership still hung heavily on her. The victory had been hard-won, but it had come at a cost. "You did well," Lyravel said softly, her voice carrying a rare note of warmth. "Without you, I would not have made it through this." Marcus nodded, grateful for her words. He glanced around the hall, where his crew had begun to regroup. They were shaken, but alive. His people had made it through, and that was what mattered most. "I couldn't have done it without your strength," he said, his voice steady. "We make a good team." Lyravel's lips curled into a faint smile, but it was quickly replaced by a look of determination. "The battle is over, but the war is far from won. Varric's supporters will not disappear so easily. We must prepare for what's to come." Marcus took a deep breath. He knew she was right. The fight for peace was only beginning. They had defeated Varric's rebellion, but there were still those who would see the union between their two worlds as a weakness, not a strength. And Marcus had no illusions about how difficult it would be to change the mindset of an entire species. "I'm ready," he said, meeting her gaze. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Lyravel studied him for a long moment, her silver eyes searching his face. Finally, she nodded. "You've proven yourself, Marcus, not just as a protector of my people, but as a partner. Your bond with me is not just a symbol anymore. It is real. We can build something stronger now, together." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Marcus had come to this alien world thinking he was making a sacrifice. He had agreed to marry Lyravel for his crew's safety, to ensure their release. But in the time since, something had changed. The bond between them had deepened beyond anything he could have imagined. It wasn't just a diplomatic union anymore. It was a partnership, a shared destiny. As the sun dipped low on the alien horizon, casting long shadows over the palace, Marcus and Lyravel stood side by side, ready for the future. Together, they had overcome impossible odds. And together, they would continue to fight, not just for their own survival, but for the unity of their two worlds. Lyravel reached out, her hand brushing against his. "This is just the beginning, Marcus. There is still much work to do, but now we will face it together. You are part of my world now, and I am part of yours." Marcus looked at her, a sense of peace settling over him. He had made the right choice. The road ahead would be challenging, but he knew one thing for sure: they were stronger together. And as they turned to face the uncertain future, Marcus finally understood the true meaning of the bond they shared. It was not just a connection between two individuals. It was the foundation of something much larger, something that would change the course of both their lives forever. The weeks that followed the defeat of Varric were filled with rebuilding. The people of Lyravel's kingdom, though weary from the rebellion, began to restore what had been lost. The alien city, once vibrant and filled with life, now stood quiet, but there was hope in the air, a sense that peace was possible, despite the challenges they had faced. Marcus found himself adjusting to life in this new world. At first, the difference in culture had been overwhelming. The alien customs, the strange food, the complicated politics, it all felt like too much at times. But slowly, he had begun to understand. The bond between him and Lyravel had grown stronger, and with each passing day, it became easier to navigate the complexities of her world. One morning, as the golden light of the alien sun filtered through the trees, Marcus walked with Lyravel through the palace gardens. The air was cooler here, filled with the scent of alien flowers that glowed faintly under the sunlight. The sounds of nature were peaceful, and for the first time since his arrival, Marcus felt a sense of calm. "I've been thinking," Lyravel said, her voice soft as they walked side by side. "The bond between us, it's more than just a connection. It's a promise, isn't it?" Marcus looked at her, surprised by the depth of her words. "A promise?" "Yes," she said, meeting his gaze. "A promise that we will stand by each other, no matter what happens. A promise that we will fight for each other's world, even if it means sacrificing everything." Marcus's heart swelled at her words. He had made a promise to protect his crew when he had first agreed to the marriage. But now he understood that the promise extended beyond that. It wasn't just about survival, it was about building something together. And he was ready for it. "I never thought I'd be here," he admitted, looking out at the vast landscape. "But now, I can't imagine being anywhere else." Lyravel smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "You've become part of this world, Marcus. You're not just a stranger anymore. You are one of us." The words felt like a heavy weight on his chest, but in the best way. He had started this journey as a man simply trying to save his crew, but now he had become something more. He had become a part of a world that was so different from his own. Yet now he felt like it was his home. The next few weeks were filled with important decisions. Lyravel and Marcus worked together to strengthen the fragile alliance between their worlds. There were meetings with other alien factions, each one offering their support, but also asking for assurances. Some had accepted the marriage, but others still questioned the union. It would take time to change their minds, but Marcus was determined. It wasn't just about political peace, it was about the people. He had seen how much Lyravel cared for her people, and he realized that he cared for them too. They weren't just aliens, they were individuals with hopes and dreams, struggles and joys, just like his own people. One day, as they stood together overlooking the city, Marcus spoke again, his voice full of resolve. "We've made progress," he said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "But there's still so much to do." Lyravel nodded. "And we will do it. Together. Together. It was more than just a word. It was a promise, one that neither of them would break. And as the sun set on the alien world, Marcus knew one thing for certain. No matter the obstacles ahead, they would face them side by side. The beginning of their future had just begun. The dawn of a new day broke over the alien planet, its soft light casting long shadows across the palace gardens. Marcus stood alone by the large glass windows, looking out over the sprawling city below. His thoughts were heavy. The weeks that followed the rebellion had been filled with progress. But the challenges were far from over. The bond with Lyravel had grown stronger, and their alliance was beginning to take shape. But now, something had changed in the air. There was a new weight to his thoughts, something that tugged at his heart, something he could no longer ignore. Behind him, the soft sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Lyravel standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with quiet concern. "You've been distant lately," she said gently, her voice soft but laced with understanding. "What's troubling you?" Marcus sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "It's everything, Lyravel. The future. Our future. The people look to us now, and there's so much responsibility. I've always known that leading isn't easy, but—" His voice trailed off. Lyravel stepped closer, her gaze steady. "You carry the weight of more than just your crew's survival now, Marcus. You carry the future of two worlds. I know it's not easy, but we face it together." He nodded slowly, but his heart wasn't at ease. "It's not just that. It's—" He paused, struggling to find the words. "I didn't ask for this life, Lyravel. I never imagined I'd be married to an alien queen, leading an entire planet to peace. I came here to save my crew. I didn't think I'd be part of something so much bigger than that." Lyravel took another step forward, her hand gently resting on his arm. "You are part of something much bigger, Marcus, and I am so grateful for you, for your bravery, for your heart, for the love you show my people and me. This wasn't forced upon you. You chose this path, whether you realized it or not, and you are exactly what my people need." Marcus looked at her, his heart conflicted. He loved her, that much was clear. He had never expected to feel this way when he agreed to the marriage. But as time passed, he had come to understand the depth of their connection, the strength of the bond they shared. He had felt her pain and her joy, and she had felt his. They were no longer two separate beings. They were intertwined, inseparable. But there was still a question that lingered, one he couldn't ignore. What about Earth? My people, my crew. My world isn't here. I've built a life with them, and I can't forget that. Lyravel's eyes softened, understanding in her gaze. "I know, Marcus, and I would never ask you to forget your world. But you've already chosen. The path ahead isn't easy, but it is the one you've set before us. We will walk it together. Your crew will have a place here, with us, in this new world, and Earth, too, will be a part of our future." Marcus felt the weight in his chest ease slightly, but the choice still hung in the air. He had come here for survival. But now he was choosing something bigger. He was choosing a future with Lyravel, with her people, with a new world that needed him. For the first time since the ceremony, Marcus truly understood the depth of his commitment. It wasn't just a promise to his crew anymore. It was a promise to Lyravel, to their worlds, and to the future they would build together. With a deep breath, Marcus made his choice. He turned to Lyravel, his voice steady. "Then let's face this future together. No matter what it brings, I choose you. I choose us." A smile broke across Lyravel's face, and for the first time, Marcus felt the full weight of his decision, the weight of a world, of two worlds united, together, forever. And as they stood side by side, hand in hand, they knew that the true journey was just beginning.